Coming up today on Locked On Texas Tech, the biggest shoes to fill on the team, and also a new way to do your Red Raider duty. Next on Locked On Texas Tech.
You are Locked On Texas Tech, your daily podcast on the Texas Tech Red Raiders. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Great to be with you again on Locked On Texas Tech on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day, always free and available on YouTube or anywhere you get podcasts. And thanks as always for making us your first listen. Today's episode brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. And this summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers every day with a boost or a bonus. That's right, something for everyone every day, all summer long. So visit FanDuel.com to get started. With the only Chris Level, I'm Casey Cowan. Chris, great to be back with you. And as we mark the time, one more non-football weekend now in our rear view. So we're getting closer and closer and closer. Fall camp is literally just around the corner, and kickoff will be as well. So we're continuing to peruse both sides of the ball. We spent some time over the last couple of weeks talking about some storylines, some questions, some angles on the offensive side of things, and wanted to kick off this week's conversation with a similar theme on the defensive side of things, and starting off where arguably the most impact for any team is felt, and that's along the defensive front. And I think maybe inarguably, from a literal standpoint, we're talking about filling the biggest shoes that you've got to fill anywhere on the team when we bring up the names Tony Bradford and Jalen Hutchings. But we'll also get to the thought that's been put forth by the coaching staff this offseason, that there's really some depth to maybe tout this year that you didn't have going into some previous seasons under Joey McGuire. So can we believe in that depth, or are we going to be missing some of that frontline impact, again, that we felt from guys like Bradford and Hutchings? But obviously very impactful spot on the field for any football team. And you're replacing two guys that were really foundational pieces of what you did between the lines. But I'd also say from a culture standpoint, what you did outside the lines as far as the standard of being a Red Raider. So this will be certainly a focal point entering the season.
Yeah, I think Tony Bradford and Jalen Hutchings were for as good as they were on the field, it was kind of like this security blanket. Like, you just always, it was the last thing you needed to worry about. You know, you may have not been overwhelmingly good there at times, but it was always steady and good, if that makes sense. Maybe it wasn't, that neither one of them is going to the NFL per se or anything like that, but they both were quality human, quality players, quality culture, chemistry, never took plays off, keep everybody loose, hold everybody accountable, on and on and on and on. And those are guys that are not easy to replace. They're just not. I mean, as much as it's going to be tough to replace a guy like Rabbit on the back end with all that he knew and then all he had seen and been through and all that, those guys up front, man, this will be a bit tricky. And I think, to your point, what Joey has talked a lot about is that 2 years ago, in Joey's first year, Tony and Jalen had to play way too many snaps. They just didn't have a choice. They being the Tim DeRuyter and the staff. It's like, we just don't have the other options there to give you guys a rest. And at that point, you get diminishing returns. A little more depth last year, but I think this is the point is this year, you may not have the guy or guys like that are just like where you don't have to necessarily, not worry about things. Maybe there is some worry that comes with this position, but I think Joey's telling everybody right now that'll listen, we've got basically 7 guys that we can rotate in and out of there. And so we've got depth. So you're not beholden to a certain starting lineup, or if somebody goes down, you should be able to, you should be okay. I mean, all these things, but what kind of quality are we talking about? Do we have just, a bunch of Jags in there, or do you have anybody that can make some things happen? And I think that 2 of your additions this offseason in some ways have been a bit under the radar in James Hansen and DeBraylon Carroll. They're both crazy experienced. I think there's probably a little more excitement for Carroll just because I think he was a better player last year. Hansen is a bit tricky because he's adapted and all that, but he was in the portal a long time. and it was kind of you kind of circled back around and was like, okay, let's make something happen here. I think he's a depth guy, and I don't mean that in a negative way. I just think it's kind of a depth guy. I don't think you're going to ask him to do too much potentially, but maybe with better people around him, maybe he elevates. But then you've got your folks, Charles Esters and Duda Banks and Quincy Ledet. Because I think personally, if you talk like level of importance, Cowan, I think Quincy Ledet may be one of the most important players on your team. Is he listed on top 10 best players or this or that? No. But I think of importance because he's done it. He's done it here. I think he's ready to take a next step. And I feel like I know what I'm getting because he's been here in this system for more than, I guess, entering year 3 now. So I think there's a level of I know what I'm getting there, and I'd really like to have him on the field quite a bit if his playmaking and health allows.
Man, that's an interesting name to bring up and put in that category, and probably one that people are going to be sleeping on as we get into fall camp. We did talk on Friday's Voices from the YouTube comments episode about some that could emerge as impact players, and DeBraylon Carroll was a name that I mentioned, but I don't know if there's a spot where you more desperately need an impact player to really emerge. And for the sake of this conversation, we're including some guys there on the edge as well, as far as some pass rushing impact along the defensive front. So obviously every team needs that. It's been kind of a strange conversation up front, I guess, for Texas Tech over the last couple of years, Chris, because we all know what Tyree Wilson's impact was like. You had some foundation or cornerstone type pieces of the program in the middle with Bradford and Hutchings. Last year, you have some guys with freakish measurables and or athletic ability, but you don't really collect the numbers as far as impacting a quarterback like you would want to. So you kind of step away from being dynamic as you were with Tyree Wilson in the fold. But I almost feel like you've got a clean slate here. Some of the guys on the edge that we talk about are either young and a guy like Dylan Spencer or are recovering from injury and missing a ton of time, and a guy like Isaac Smith. And then you've got this hodgepodge of guys that we've discussed here in the middle who are not going to be frontline dudes as far as name recognition is concerned. I think Joey McGuire's called them a no-name defense a couple of times this offseason, but kind of wondering maybe how long that lasts. And we always know that somebody's going to rise. Maybe somebody kind of falls back into the shadows we didn't expect to be that way, but that's what fall camp and the season is for. So I know some of this conversation is going to change, but I mean, we've mentioned it several times this offseason. You leave the bowl game with a name on your mind that really wasn't on my mind throughout almost the entirety of the season. When we're talking about Amir Washington, I mean, a guy that just, what did he collect? 4 or 5 sacks, something like that. And I'm like hitting the offseason thinking, okay, was this guy on the roster all year or what? But I mean, there is opportunity available, I guess, is one general way to describe this, right? Because you got a lot of impact. Like I said, you got big shoes to fill.
Yeah, I think this is a group that we don't have like nailed down on who's who just yet. And what I mean by that is, do we have clear-cut starters? Do we have clear-cut, this is your best player, these are your best players? I don't know if we've really identified all of that just yet. Maybe it takes us a week or 6. I'm not real sure. But just to give everybody like some context, because your starting 4 last year up front was Jalen Toney, Miles Cole, and Steve Linton. And yeah, Linton was dinged up some. Miles Cole didn't quite do what you'd hoped, but that quartet still totaled, I think, 14.5 sacks total amongst them. I think while we were sitting here talking, I think I looked at I've got like 12 guys on the depth chart in front of me, and I think I tallied like 17 career sacks, amongst that. And that includes, DeBraylon Carroll has 7 in his career, and he's played a ton of football. And he clearly leads the group there. But that just gives you an idea. And some will say sacks are overrated. It's just it's a barometer. It gives you an idea of kind of, disruption, kind of playmaking and things like that. But yeah, some will say, hey man, don't put too much stock in the sack total and this and that. How many turnovers are we creating? How many yards per rush are we allowing? How many points you allow? There's a variety of different other numbers that you can judge a defensive line or even individually on. But sacks is just something that we kind of they're sexy, if you will. If you want to go that route, yeah, we love that, especially strip sacks. Yeah,
yes,
yeah, that's right. But it's funny because, like, when's the last time you heard the name Steve Linton? We've kind of talk about, and guess what? You're going to see him. I mean, he's at Baylor. It's just funny because he's a guy that we talk so much about, so much excitement, and it just didn't really happen. And then now he transfers within the league, but you're trying to replace what you thought he could do for you. Same with Miles Cole. I remember the commentary before spring a year ago. These two bookend defensive ends are going to be special. These are draft worthy. Well, one of them was a 7th-round pick. The other one transferred out and neither one of them chose to play in the bowl game and at the end of the season and all those things. And it just didn't end well. But a lot of potential here. A guy that we should spend a lot of time talking about because he was very highly recruited. He played most of last year with a shoulder issue, which needed to be taken care of, and he missed most of spring, was Joseph Adedire. Yes. He is one of your best players. He's kind of that guy you could put on the edge. You could move him inside. You could do some different things with him on pass rushing situations. But he's just a really good football player. Do I wish he was 2 or 3 inches taller? Yes. If he was, we'd be talking, high-end draft pick. But as it stands, he is very good and hopefully healthy now. But he's got a chance really to be a bit of a household name because he's special. He's got some pedigree to him and some special qualities. And then on the other side of it, it's Isaac Smith. And we know what my thoughts are there. We've seen flashes, but now it's just a matter of staying healthy. And I was upset and I took that hard last year, not without being corny, whenever I found out he had an ACL and he was out for the year. When we get that news, and can't remember if it was late July or early August, whatever it was like he's going to be out. I thought, damn. Because, don't forget, in that bowl game, which is the last time you'd seen him against Ole Miss, that stud left tackle was sick of blocking him, and he just was like, you know what? I'm going to take a cheap shot. I'm going to step on this dude's hip, and I'm going to take him out of the game, and he did. And because Isaac Smith was just doing a number on that poor Reb.
I always love it when you bring up that memory. We broke them that day. They got broke. You mentioned Linton and Cole and who wasn't in the bowl game, and I was just sitting here thinking about. First, today's episode brought to you by Ibotta, a free app that gives you the most cash back every time you shop on hundreds of items so you can make sure you're beating inflation no matter what you're buying. Other apps give you points that don't amount to much, but with Ibotta, just add your offers in the app, upload your receipt, and you can get real cash that you can cash out to your bank account, PayPal, or even gift cards. Join the over 50 million users and earn cash back every time you shop from over 2,700 brands and retailers, including Lowe's, Best Buy, and plenty more. And right now, Ibotta is offering our listeners $5 just for trying Ibotta by using the code LOCKEDONCollege when you register. So just go to the App Store or Google Play Store and download the free Ibotta app to start earning cash back and use our code LOCKEDONCollege. That's Ibotta, IBOTTA, in the Google Play or App Store, and use our code LOCKEDONCollege. Today's episode brought to you by Factor. Fuel up this summer with Factor's no prep, no mess meals and meet all of your wellness goals thanks to the menu of chef-crafted options like Calorie Smart, Protein Plus, even keto. Factor's fresh, never frozen meals are dietitian approved and ready to eat in only 2 minutes. So no matter how busy you are, you'll always have time to enjoy nutritious, great tasting meals. What are you waiting for? Make today the day you kickstart a new healthy routine. With 35 different meals and more than 60 add-ons to choose from every week, you're going to always have new flavors to explore. From breakfast to dessert, you can stay fueled with easy, nutritious options. So go ahead and treat yourself to restaurant quality meals that feature premium ingredients like filet mignon, shrimp, blackened salmon, and much, much more, all while keeping kitchen time to a minimum, since Factor meals are ready in only 2 minutes. No shopping, prepping, cooking, or cleaning up. So head to factormeals.com/lockedoncollege50 and use our code LOCKEDONCollege50 to get 50% off your first box plus 20% off your next month. That's code LOCKEDONCollege50 at factormeals.com/lockedoncollege50 for 50% off your first box plus 20% off your next month while your subscription is active with Factor. You know, you mentioned Linton and Cole and who wasn't in the bowl game, and I was just sitting here thinking about, did we notice? I mean, you collect 6 sacks that day. I already mentioned Washington getting busy, but he wasn't the only one. I mean, you had 6 as a team. Now, it may have something to do with Cal. I don't know. But it is crazy that we're sitting here having this conversation going into this year, and we're not talking as much about filling those shoes on the edge like maybe you kind of thought you would be. It's more so, again, about Bradford and Hutchings there in the middle, but wish you could have gotten a little bit more out of those guys. I think there were some areas in which they were fine. They were serviceable, but you're looking for more than serviceable from some of those guys on the edge, and you're looking from some kind of game-changing or momentum-changing type of plays. And, just in our conversation last week, looking ahead to the Horned Frogs, we were talking with Elvis Gallegos, talking about that team having a wide swing as far as the turnover margin over the last couple of years. Really good a couple of years ago, really bad last year. And he was one that pointed to, in his opinion, it all starts up front, and you've got to wreak havoc in the pocket. And you're right, it's not always about collecting the sack, but it's about really disrupting what the quarterback is able to do and can lead to some really good things there down the field. But I've said this a couple of times this offseason. Maybe I'm just, hoping against hope as a Tech fan that it will be the case, but I almost feel like, in the case of Dylan Spencer and maybe some of these younger guys that were called into action a year ago, and if they're not young, I should say inexperienced guys, that you see some of those things begin to pay off because, as you've pointed out, a lot of people wanted Dylan Spencer to play football for them. He's playing for the Red Raiders, and I think was called into maybe some full-time duty a little earlier than anybody would have hoped, but hopefully not going to be a bad thing for him as we get into year number 2. So, opportunity doesn't necessarily have to be a bad thing. We all want, obviously, a frontline preseason, all-conference kind of animal up there along the defensive front. But I think there's also something to the standpoint of competition breeding some success, and maybe not so much necessarily on the edge, but within that interior, you're going to have some real competition playing out. And I can't wait to see how that iron sort of sharpens that iron. And I mean, you mentioned Adedire, who was a guy that we talked about last year as being kind of a sleeper star, so to speak, or a guy that could really make an impact. Haven't even begun to see that come to fruition. So there are a lot of times, obviously, we'll be talking about a guy's career ending, and it's all about potential unrealized. And I don't know, that may be the case with some of these we're mentioning here today, but it does seem to be the case. There's a ton of potential if you can find a way to sort it out, and hopefully, knock on wood, have some good luck from a health standpoint.
Yeah, you just hope that with some of these guys, it starts to click sooner than later. And what I mean by that is some of these guys just haven't. It takes a bit. I think you have younger players or some inexperience, and sometimes guys get brought along slower, or sometimes it just takes a while for the game to slow down for certain guys. With somebody like Dylan Spencer, you hope that it starts to click really soon, because not many people on that team possess the physical characteristics that he does. He is, listed at about 6'5", 250. He's got freakish ability and bend and all the things that the football folks talk about. It's just a matter of being consistent, doing it every game, and all those things. And as much as I love Isaac, he's got to prove his availability, and be there. You talked about Amir Washington and all that. Was it Cal? I mean, you're sitting there. I mean, Charles Esters had a 3-sack game last year. It was against Baylor. Unfortunately, I think that was probably Baylor and not Charles Esters per se.
A lot of guys having fun that day in Waco.
Okay. Yeah. But he's a work hard guy. You know, I think Duda Banks has done some good things. Jaden Cofield. I mean, Trayvon McAlpine. There's some different options here. It's just going to be a matter of us sorting through, because while we can sit here and talk about, man, you got 10 to 12 guys in total that you feel good about putting out there on a Saturday afternoon, I'd be lying if I didn't tell you, yeah, but if you gave me the right 7, like the right ones, I'd take that. You know, I mean, it's kind of, God, these are 2 really good quarterbacks. They can't decide which one of them we need to play. Well, yeah, we know what the old saying there is. Right. Yeah, you know, like if you have 2, you don't have 1. Mm-hmm. So, but I think there's some possibilities here. I mean, again, Adedire, very highly recruited. Dylan Spencer, very highly recruited. Isaac Smith, I think, was highly recruited, but not like the other 2. But I think there was, I think he was somebody that they really hit on. Like I'm telling you, man, I think if he's got some similarities to what I saw whenever we saw him at the tail end of 2 seasons ago, and now he's bulked up, clearly been in the weight room and all those things, I just think he's got some unlimited potential with him based on his work ethic, his personality, and just kind of he just kind of comes after you repeatedly. And because that's the thing about Linton, was there was so many plays that he almost made, and you see him, oh, he slipped, or he's just like a half a second. At the times when we saw Isaac Smith in those flashes, that last 3 or 4 games of the year, so he could still play and then not get counted with his eligibility, he was making those plays. You know, he was getting home and things like that. So we'll see what ultimately we get. But this position group is probably as big of a reason why you could either be thumbs up, thumbs down, or thumbs sideways on just the defenses in total. Right. Because it really sums up the defense as a whole on kind of, well, there's some possibilities here, but boy, there's some questions here. We may really like the results. Some of the results may be to be determined. You know, so that kind of is really what spills over in this whole side of the ball, honestly. But the results of the spring were pretty good. I just don't know how much stock we want to put into that.
Well, and also, I mean, we're talking about getting to the quarterback and things like that, but run stuffing, a little bit of a different skill set. And I would say as well, keeping linebackers clean, a little bit of a different skill set. And we think you've got some pretty good linebackers behind that defensive line. So you want to allow Roberts and Rodriguez to be out there with the ability to make plays. Yeah.
Yep. Keep them clean.
Which I think, I was just going to say, I think take some bulk in a way also to just occupy some space, occupy some manpower from the offensive line or a fullback, whatever it might be. I'm wondering, do we consider this group a little undersized compared to where you want to be? You've got some 300-pounders out there, but I don't know. How do you feel about the measurables aspect of it? I think you have about 6 guys that are 300, maybe more, that you plan on playing. I mean, so yeah, you know, I always this is way before your time, Cowan, but I think he actually went to SMU, but he used to play for the Detroit Lions. When I think of bulk on the interior. First, today's episode brought to you by FanDuel. And summertime means baseball, burgers, and money in the bank when you're picking a winner with FanDuel. And this summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a boost or a bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everyone all summer long. So head on over to FanDuel.com and start making the most out of your summer by beating the heat with a refreshing parlay. An over-under play, or by getting the moneyline mojo working. Visit FanDuel.com and make a splash by adding a big win to your summer bucket list with FanDuel, official sports betting partner of Major League Baseball.
This is way before your time, Cowan, but I think he actually went to SMU, but he used to play for the Detroit Lions. When I think of bulk on the interior, there's a guy named Jerry Ball, and that's how he was built. And his sole job back in the day is when the Cowboys were pretty good and all that stuff. But back in the day, it's like how many it's like he would try to be a magnet to offensive linemen. Like, how many dudes can I just suck up so everybody else can go do their thing? But if he got rolling downhill, it was like this whirling dervish, and he was just a fire plug. And I would say, I bet he weighed about 350, maybe a little bit more than that. You don't have anybody like that, but I think that you don't necessarily need that this day and age because everybody spreads the ball out. You've got to be more of an athlete. You've got to cover and be versatile and do some different things. There's just not many teams a lot of QB run game, and not a lot of teams just turn around and run an I formation, trying to hammer it right at you. So I think
that's interesting. I hadn't really considered that. You think there's enough maybe of an evolution as far as what offenses do where it's kind of changed the value of the measurables at that spot?
Yeah. I mean, ideally you have what like Texas had last year, because they did have a dude that was like 340, 350.
That's true.
In the sweat kit, but he could move.
He could run.
He could run. I mean, it's like watching Larry Allen, that one interception, against the Saints years and years ago. That clip that's just so famous, where he just like, that dude is 6'5", 330, and he just caught that linebacker from behind with a head start. And I always reference the old school Cowboys. I'm sorry, because I mean, maybe I'm just trying to reminisce in some of my positivity there back in the day, because boy, they sure haven't. They don't have a lot of guys that you'd want.
No, not much new worth referencing.
Yeah, that's right. That was like 30 years ago that they were decent. Now they just disappoint. Larry Allen never disappointed me. R.I.P. One of the best that's ever laced him up and done it at any level, any position. But I do think there is some of that. Yeah, just because of the versatility in the college game, and how. Even if people aren't running the spread, there's a lot of spread principles where they maybe are going to try to power run game, but it's with wide splits, and it's like everybody's trying to take advantage of all the space on the field. And so I do think you need some guys that run, that aren't just so thick and bulked up that could get taken advantage of when you're getting wide, or whatever it may be. So I think there's some of that, absolutely. But if we're picking, I'd like the kind of guy that was playing for like UT last year up the middle, because he had the measurables and he could run, but that's why he was drafted fairly high.
And they had a tandem of them. One wasn't quite the other, but they were both pretty solid. They would have been alone. When you were mentioning Jerry Ball, or a guy of that stature, I was thinking about Gilbert Brown, a little bit more recent era there in the 90s into 2000. You got me diving down a quick Jerry Ball research project, though, and I learned that for Westbrook High School in Beaumont, Texas, he rushed for 1,000 yards. Did you know this? 330 pounds, 6'2", and he rushed for 1,000 yards in high school. That's an athlete, baby. That's a manimal.
What was he? Do you have? 6'1", 330 is what I'm seeing.
Yeah, that's what I got for him. Gilbert Brown, 6'2", 340. I remember him with the Packers mostly, but those are some blasts from the past.
Iowa State may try to hammer it right at you a little bit. Some of the teams that may have, like the Kansas States, the Utahs, you're not going to see. TCU may have a component of that. I think certainly Oklahoma State with Ollie Gordon, but it's just a bit different, and that's the scary thing about, like, you look at how inexperienced your group up front is. And again, that game's at the tail end of the season. So much can and will change between now and then. But look at all your inexperience, at least together here with this group in total. And you go back and you look at like your game against Oklahoma State. They return all 5 starters on the offensive line. I think a lot of those guys have played more than 2 years together. Not all 5, but the bulk of them. And then you have a running back that was the leading rusher in the country. That seems a bit tenuous when you look at it on paper versus this, but thankfully it's not played on paper, and that's not until, mid-November, I guess it would be. So who knows what will change. But at first glance, when you start looking at some of these games on paper, probably would count that as, okay, I'll check that boxes as far as an advantage for Oklahoma State in that category. But again, it's because we don't know what we don't know just yet.
Yeah, man, can't wait to find out. And like I said, you need it as much as anywhere for some impact to emerge. Obviously, getting it done in the trenches on both sides of the ball is what could take a season from good, okay, and or fun to great and really interesting as far as competing for some hardware in the conference or beyond. Before we get out of here, Chris, I'm going to make a hard left and switch gears totally, but there's kind of a segue here because
let's talk beer.
Well, I'm thinking maybe I'm working my way to the stature of Gilbert Brown, at least in the midsection. If I continue to support the Red Raiders in the fashion that I did this weekend, are you answering the Red Raider calling? Are you doing your Red Raider duty? Well, I was this weekend, Chris. I was riding for the brand. I tweeted this out yesterday. If you're not familiar, we now have our very own NIL funding, Texas Tech owned, operated, originated beer. Raiderland Red Pale Ale. I'm putting the tweet on the screen there. If you didn't see it yesterday, it says, do you guns up or do you guns up? Proud to be funding DTs, DEs, CBs, OTs, and BMFs of all varieties with every swig. Now, when we talked NIL era before it began, I can't say this is something that I was really imagining. So credit to those outside the box thinkers that are like, yeah, we'll sell beer and a portion of it will go to funding name, image, and likeness opportunities for Texas Tech student athletes. So I got into a big dose over the weekend, and I even had to tell my wife, as the time is coming to an end there, she's saying, are you going to have another? And I'm saying, baby, let me check with Coach McGuire. I think he'd want me to. We're this close. We're this close to getting a difference-making defensive end or something like that. So I tried to do my Red Raider duty. I did pick up a 6-pack and will continue to be imbibing with Raiderland Red Pale Ale this season. But I'm going to have to hit the treadmill or something because this stuff is going to turn me into Jerry Ball without the athleticism if I don't look out, Chris. Have you had an opportunity to conduct a taste test yet?
I should have used I shouldn't have gone Jerry Ball. You know what you ultimately need, what we're looking for up front as far as a difference maker and a man mover is Colby Whitlock. That would have been
yes, sir.
Yeah, that would have been a better one. As far as beer drinking goes, he would have fit the conversation perfectly. Love that dude. Country strong. Yeah. I mean, so Tech is, I don't want to say like late to the party, but there's a lot of schools out there that have the beer or the seltzer or the drink that kind of funnels into the collective, and it's kind of a partnership and all those things. And it's genius when you think about it, because what's the one thing college football fans typically all have in common? They love the sauce, right?
Drinking beer, baby.
Like I can help the old alma mater, and I can drink beer, just like you said. Yeah. Hey, honey, I'm double dipping here. I mean, I'm enjoying myself. I'm helping the Red Raiders. Like, what more do you want from me? I mean, like
do you not want Tech to be good?
That's right.
Riding for the brand. Let's go.
I have not tried it yet. I know a lot of the guys involved with Two Docs, phenomenal people. I hope the event this past Friday night was a success. I think that that's a fun venture for those guys, but they're very serious about it. I think they do good work, good product. They're on various taps around the city, and then you can go obviously buy it in stores and obviously go and enjoy yourself at the actual brewery downtown there, or close to downtown, and enjoy some outside vibes and all those things. But this is good. This is like, there's a lot of synergism in sports, and especially in college sports. That's what this is to me. Two Docs, great people, beer, football, Tech, all kind of, just mixed in one concoction there. Yeah, sign me up. Winners abound all over the place.
And it's also a great opportunity because I was at a table full of Red Raiders over the weekend, and it's a great opportunity to shame anyone who's a Red Raider and not drinking Raiderland Red Pale Ale at the table. I made sure that they hung their heads in shame, and I even bullied a few of them even into getting into it. But it will leave you solidly having a good time. So just make sure we are responsibly supporting Texas Tech name, image, and likeness, right? I knew for sure. There was no question when I left there. I was having fun. I knew you could maybe see it in my eyes. This guy's having a good time. And thanks to my wife for rolling me home.
That's what life's all about, man. It's short. It's short. Better have a good time.
That's right. You can find Raiderland Red Pale Ale all over town. Like Chris said, seen it on a few different taps. Of course, they're at Two Docs. So shout out to them in beautiful downtown Lubbock, Texas America. Chris, appreciate your time today. We will continue to roll through some defensively oriented conversations, and fall camp is coming up, folks. So strap it on because it's about to get serious.
Yeah, we got media day coming up. I guess it would be tomorrow. So you're going to get a lot of sound and sights and all that from a lot of players, coaches, and they're getting close before it gets underway. And then we'll have it'll kind of die down a little bit. It's like, man, is the season opener ever going to get here? But I think we have football this week, Calvin, don't we? Isn't that right? Didn't you tell me that this week or weekend we got some football on TV?
Preseason action.
Inject it right into my veins, man. Yes, sir.
Yeah, start to get those muscles loosened up, get back in your routine, get your livers ready, boys and girls.
That's right. Yeah. Toss around the pigskin. I'm good to go.
That's right. Yes. All right, man. We'll see you for the next round. Enjoyed it.
All right. Appreciate it, man. Guns up, everybody. Keep hope alive.
And get subscribed on YouTube or anywhere you get podcasts so you never miss an episode. Best way to help us grow the show, of course, is to comment anything below. So go on and dive in. Enjoy that. The water is warm. Thanks for making us your first listen. And for your second listen, check out Locked On Big 12 on YouTube or anywhere you find podcasts. For Chris, I'm Casey. Thanks for being out there. And we hope to see you back for the next round on Locked On Texas Tech.